This week on the Digital Marketing Scoop, I am talking with Thomas Marriott. Tom is the Digital Marketing Director for Inna4, a digital marketing agency in the UK. Great chat with Tom, as always. It's not his first time on the podcast. We're really kind of digging deep into to SEO, so I think there's going to be some really good tips for business owners or marketing people here from an SEO point of view. Some really good tips to help you increase your rankings and to deal with some of the recent updates that the Google have made to the algorithm. So thanks so much to Thomas for coming along, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Tom, welcome back to the podcast, man.
Thank you so much for having me back. It is a pleasure, a privilege. I'm going to get it put on my wall to say that I am a two. How many people have been two-time? I need to know this now. How many people have been two-time guests?
2 times. 1, 2, 3. I think 4. So I think you're 5.
That's small enough.
I could be way off now.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
that's small
plaques
enough
on the walls.
Yes, that's all I asked. Look, I just asked for my portrait. I'll pose for it now so we can take a screenshot. There we go. And I just asked for it to be on the walls of the offices, please.
So, Tom, for those who didn't hear the first episode you were on, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Tom. I'm digital. Well, first and foremost, my day job. I probably did this joke last time, but sod it. My day job is I am digital marketing director for an agency over in England called Inna4, based in Wigan, which is just outside Manchester. We've also got another office over in Leeds, and yeah, we do website builds and we do digital marketing, which is the part that I head up, I suppose, for a myriad of different clients. Last count, I did a small count last time of clients. I don't do that very often. We have 42 marketing retainer clients going on at the moment, which I just thought, that's insane. That's actually crazy, man.
How many are in the business?
Oh, there's another great question. Again, I don't do counting very often. Math's not my strong point. I would say about 20 in total, about 20, but not that. I mean, our department is not, the marketing department is, I suppose it has a big extended team. We have people that, because you could never sort of separate. You could say, oh, there's a marketing team and then there's a dev team and then there's the PM team and all that kind of stuff. But actually, truth be told, all those teams integrated with each other anyway. So you could say that all 20 really work on all of those clients at any one single time. So I'm not as terrified as I once was.
That's some about the retainer clients, so that's brilliant. And in terms of scope of work for them, then obviously we're going to chat a bit today about the SEO side of things, but you're providing a full suite of digital marketing and development services for them then by the sounds of things? Yeah,
which is almost a taboo thing to say nowadays, but it's not necessarily. I mean, it goes in and out of fashion like anything to say you're a full service agency, but the fact is, yeah, we are to a degree. But I suppose the thing that I will say, we're not packages anymore. We don't do packages. Do you remember those days? They were great days when they were
gold, silver, bronze.
Yeah, gold, silver, bronze. I do. You can't call them upper, mid, and lower anymore. Dare call anything basic, because then they'll be right out the window. Or you call it basic in the hope that they upgrade themselves. No, we don't. That's not the case anymore. You can't do that in this modern age. So no, everything's kind of at the end of the day. I'm probably the last of a dying breed, which is what I would call, you can get full stack developers that do front end and they do back end, and they're traditionally old looking because they've aged throughout it. But I'm a full stack marketer in the fact that I'm an expert in absolutely nothing by any means, and I have a team of people who are experts in their field. But me, I kind of know a bit of everything, which is dangerous, which means that I have to be reeled in on a regular basis to say, Tom, don't pretend you know what you're talking about. You said the right things. Sometimes I get away with it by just pretending to sound smart. But no,
you've got to flip it the other way, though. You know enough just to be dangerous. You got to turn it that way.
Yeah, which I suppose is what my team try and they try and stroke my ego to say that side of it. But no, I'm a full stack marketer, which means I know absolutely nothing about a lot of things.
So one thing you said to me, which is fairly in the news is the wrong word at the moment, but it's a big thing in the marketing space at the moment, is Google's update around page experience, around core web vitals. So you mentioned that's kind of something you've been working on a lot at the moment.
Yeah, I seem to be having a lot of conversations about it. These things kind of circle around quite a lot, and you end up having conversations about certain things. If you'd have asked me a couple of months ago, everything would have been this iOS update and things like that. I would have been talking about, and so these things kind of circle around. But certainly over the last 12 months, there's been a real amp up in the fact that I'm having a lot of conversations about Google's new web experience update. And the fact is, I know this is coming up quite quickly, and it's coming as a bit of a surprise for some people, but this has been bubbling under the surface now. And, Google have announced it for nearly 18 months, 12 months kind of thing.
I think they even delayed it, didn't they, because of COVID?
They did, yeah. So we were really ramping up our efforts internally to be ready for the rollout it was kind of meant to be April, May time. And then they, presumably due to pandemic reasons, they turned around and said, well, we're not gonna do that, which it's a bit of a trend at the moment. I don't know if you noticed this, and let's just have a natter about different things now. But have you noticed that there have been certain things, Google's other update regarding cookies and their flock,
Delayed that.
yeah, they've delayed that.
The partner status with Google Ads, they delayed that.
Delaying that. There's a lot of things that are sort of, if you want, I was talking to Facebook yesterday, not Mark himself, obviously, he's too busy on one of his hoverboards holding an American flag at the moment. But I was talking to Facebook, and they're doing a lot of the same. They seem to be at the forefront of everything at the moment. Their conversion API in terms of their third-party cookies with tracking and everything like that. They've released that. It was a little rushed, okay, let's be honest. It was a little rushed and chaotic there for a while, but they've released all that, and now they're doing huge things with their attribution model and changing all that. They're doing major differences with their analytics and how they're tracking all that, because obviously it's a knock-on effect to everything. So I don't know who's in the right here. I don't know whether this is the case of Facebook are just trying to rush everything out, which, let's be honest, it might be. I hope, Connor, if you're listening, who's my Facebook rep, I hope you're not listening to this. I'm slagging you off here and your company. But I think it is a bit rushed on Facebook's side. But in Google's side, they seem to be, well, I want to make sure everything's prepared. And it's sounding like, the murmurs that we're hearing about Flock and Google's cookies transition, shall we call it? It sounded like they're going back to the drawing board on that one. They seem to be ripping that up. They lauded over the start of the year to say, hey, this is going to be great. Your ads are going to be so much better, even though you're not going to have this individual data anymore. It's going to be pooled in pods of people. It's going to be better for you. But now they've sort of gone away and said, oh, we're actually going to go out to the drawing board a little bit, and we're going to rethink this model. So really,
test didn't go quite the way they expected.
It's clearly must have not. Yeah, it's clearly there've been some issues gone along. So it's a really interesting time. We've had a state of play in the digital marketing space for many, many years, which has been kind of status quo. There's not been a huge amount of. There's been transitions. There's been new platforms and things like that. But actually, in terms of big, major foundational changes, there's not been a huge amount, and they seem to all be happening in a short space of time, which is an exciting time to be in. But anyway, what was the original question? Oh yeah, web experience. So web experience is one of these things. We've heard about it for a long time. It got pushed back, but it's a big deal. It's a big deal because at the end of the day, Google, this is the one you can say all you want about privacy and Google and Facebook and them wanting to take all your data and sell it and all that kind of thing. But actually, and you can think what you want about that. At the end of the day, this initiative, let's call it an initiative about web user experience, is the one positive that you can take. This is Google trying to say, we want to make the web a better place. Now, they may not be making the web a better place in terms of recent going ons on social media and all of that kind of stuff. That's firmly in the hands of governments and social medias about racism and stuff like that. But if they're going to try and make the web a better place by simply trying to make it, as frictionless experience as possible, then that is only a good thing. And we know over the 30 odd years that we've had of the internet and the transition and how much that technology has changed, it's about time that this leading initiative on the web has started taking steps to start making the web and the internet and web pages a better experience for users. And in this case, it doesn't seem to be all about making money, which is good.
Well, at the end of the day, Google want to be the best search engine. And one of the ways to do that is when you hit that top result, that yes, the information is exactly what you're looking for, but also you hit that website and you're getting the best possible experience. So if that does happen, you stay on Google. You don't go to Bing. Not that too many do anyway.
No, exactly.
But Google at the end of the day, they want to give you the best possible results and give you the best possible experience. So now they're forcing people to help on that experience side.
Yes, and isn't that an interesting cycle? Because at the end of the day, the reason why Google had its dominance all of those years ago, back in '98, when they were launching and they were really ramping things up, the reason why they were so popular was because of that experience. It wasn't a Yahoo which was full of adverts already. It was already an experience which was just a page with a search box and you could search, and they're going back to type there. Now, in other ways on their Google Ads platform, you could argue that they're doing different things. And you actually look at a SERP. I did a LinkedIn post about this recently. You look at a SERP nowadays and it's so much different than what we expected and what we are used to. Yeah, there's a lot going on, and part of that is also the fact that we used to see really bright yellow Google adverts not that long ago, and now we barely see them, and there used to be 3 and now there's about 5 on top and bottom. That's changing a lot. But in this instance, this is a case of Google, exactly what you said. They're trying to provide the best experience. And there's a lot of, look, I don't know what the latest figures are still, but as far from what I remember, it's over 90% of uptake on Google users compared to other search engines. Bing and DuckDuckGo. The only reason Bing's got there is because people are stuck on Windows. And
default.
Yeah, it's default. Okay, which is not a great place to be. And then there's DuckDuckGo Go for the people that want to have that privacy focus and privacy in mind.
DuckDuckGolf also sounds like a fantastic one, though.
I'm thinking about forking that on GitHub. Yeah. I might get in trouble for it, though.
You really got to check that domain name's available.
Yeah. Do you know what? You might see me just looking over here during the course of this while I check that. Yeah. But it's for privacy focused people, and that's fine. And if they can't compete on those levels, if Google can't compete on the level of fact that they can't do privacy, and they're trying, but they've put it off, and they know that it's going to really impact their bottom line if they do go down that hard line on a DuckDuckGo way, then the best way that Google attacking this is doing user experience, and we know that they can do user experience really, really well.
Yeah, it is going to be very interesting. I'm hoping this is actually going to maybe even for someone like a full service agency be much more of a shift, because like just even from our own example, we'll say someone comes to us and they're looking for Google Shopping, Facebook catalog, all those types of ads. But if the user experience then on an e-commerce site is, okay, we're waiting 6 seconds for this page to load, you need to be in communication with that dev team. You need to get that sorted, because it doesn't make a difference how wonderful your ad campaigns are, or how if they're not actually getting to see your content in a user-friendly and a quick way.
Yeah, we do have a rule here at Inner4, which is we do not do marketing. And it was a rule that I enforced quite early on. We don't do marketing for websites that we don't own. And that's not because we...
Really?
Yeah, we can't. We don't do it because, for that very reason, it is so difficult to start creating a cohesive user experience when you're feeding. You could feed traffic and push traffic all day long to all of these things, but if you don't have the ownership of a website to be able to go, okay, well, we need to do this small tweak here, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to conversion rate. Okay, you can
Yep.
throw as much traffic down as you to you as one. You can throw a million, users to a website, but if you've got a 0.0001% conversion rate, then I may as well throw 100 and have a 10% conversion rate. It doesn't make sense. So we ended up having a lot of difficult conversations with clients, and I didn't feel comfortable saying, okay, well, we're going to do this for you, Mr. Client, but we're not going to do it, we're not going to feed back results to you about how many orders that you get and the bottom line and the revenue that you've achieved or the number of leads, because at the end of the day we have no control over it. And it felt over a series of different projects, it felt like we were just sort of burning money, because at the end of the day we couldn't achieve the right conversion rate for our clients. So we made a call and we had to purge a lot. Unfortunately, we had to purge a lot of clients because they were either, they were set with their current agency, which is fine, but or they weren't willing to obviously come on board with us and rebuild their website to do that, and that's fine as well. But we had to lose a lot of clients because of that, because at the end of the day, it just didn't make sense for us to be providing that service. Because it is all cohesive. We need to stop thinking about all of this being really segmented. It's not segmented. Facebook, Google Ads, SEO, they all should be part of the same journey. And, go onto
Absolutely.
your Google Ads, look at your, and go into conversions and look at your assisted conversions and start seeing there. You will see how many people hop from one platform to the next in terms of coming to your website and where they came from and how they interacted with you. It's not just, oh, I'll type in this into Google and there I am on the website. Oh, well, I'll convert. That's not how people engage with the web. It may be, but now we've all got mobile phones and we've all got tablets and laptops and different devices. So we all engage in different ways, and we've all got a mass load of platforms that we use on a daily basis as well. So we need to start thinking about this all as one. And if you start thinking about things in different channels and segments, it's a one-way street to an unsuccessful campaign.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what platform somebody comes from. You want them to have a great experience. So I suppose it is. I think as you say, it is a very positive thing. I do find that interesting. You're saying you don't work with clients from if you're not doing the web build as well, because literally we just encountered this issue the other day. So we just came in and did site speed optimization, but they still kept the site with the original provider. So that got us over the line there, and that it did the job. The site was working fine. It was just and we go through maybe some of the things people could do in a minute, but really crappy server, all that type of stuff, just terrible code, all that, and come in, bring the site speed up, and obviously one of the biggest impacts on a conversion rate is going to be the speed of the site. So that's kind of a way we kind of work around it a bit. Is we say, we don't want to step on any toes here or whatever, but look, if you're going to come on board and we're going to do this, we're going to have to really increase the speed of your website here, and either they're on board for that or they're not.
Exactly. And what we've found is, certainly when we've done a lot of the exact same process that you've been through, doing the site speed audit, working on that. What we found was it can be so much more. So for example, we've recently done it with a very large enterprise level website. It's a FTSE 100 company. The website is merely a year old. If it was an hour old, then I'd be really worried. But it was a year old. But the end of the day, the reason why we had to do it was because we were tasked with from up above to make sure this website was future proof for the next 5 years. I went into a meeting and said, look, I can't future proof it for the next 5 years because I don't know what Google's going to do tomorrow, never mind in a year's time, but I can future proof it as far as I can. And so we went through this process, and what we found, even on an enterprise level website, which again we'd built, we'd scoped all of that kind of stuff, it can become so nitty gritty that if we hadn't had that nitty gritty control of the website, if we hadn't had the people in our team that understood the website to such a degree that they knew how to make the changes necessary to make those improvements, it would have been a very, very difficult task to do. And equally, it would have been a very expensive task to do, because it's not just doing the audit and implementation. the large part of doing this a site speed performance audit is the audit itself. It's not the implementation, it's the investigation work to identify this is a problem, this is a bottleneck, this is slowing things down. Then we come up with a solution. Typically, the solutions can be quoted, an hour, 2 hours in terms of development time. The big part of it is the investigation. If you don't have the people in place that know the system, the website, the technical nitty gritty, that 1 to 2 hours may end up being 4, 5, 10 hours because they don't know where this particular piece of JavaScript code is nested within one larger piece of JavaScript code and how they're going to, rip that out and put it somewhere else, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And in terms of that investigation, is there a team or something cropping up quite regularly you've seen in them that you find is happening to a lot of businesses that's slowing them down?
Yeah, there is a theme that I think with the ones that we've done, there are typically levels, and it can break down into one one you've already pointed out, which is server infrastructure, server architecture. Now that can be that. That's actually sounds really specific, but that's actually really broad. That can be the actual pieces of metal in which the server is on, whether it's shared or whether it's separate hosting, and then things like what version of PHP the server is on as well. So we discovered even with our own, certain older clients of our own, which have been with us for 15 years, they were on quite old, deprecated PHP versions. These are things that you just don't discover until you start doing these investigations. So we had to pull them and start putting those onto new PHP versions. And actually, you'll find that doing things on a server level can have quite a large impact. The problem with that advice, I'll say, giving that out is you need to have the technical expertise in terms of the server people to be able to go, okay, well, we're going to do this and do that in terms of server. That can be quite complex and convoluted. Just upgrading PHP is not like upgrading an app on your phone. It can sometimes
break a few things.
That can break a lot of things. That can break a lot of things. So we sometimes even have to rebuild sites, not completely. Front end's largely okay, but sometimes we have to rebuild sites, reformat sites as well, in order to make it work on that latest PHP. So that's one. Two is an obvious one, and I know this kind of gets thrown around quite a lot, which is images. Images is a big one because if you're working on a CMS, okay, if you're working on a CMS and you have control of that CMS and you start adding images and updating web sliders or whatever, those images, you probably don't think about uploading the images, or because we have platforms now which typically compress images for us, Facebook being one, they compress images for us, so we don't have to think about it. CMSs don't do that, out of the box, okay? So we either have to implement certain things to compress images as they go through, or you need to think about what images you're putting on in terms of their size. So there's two sizes of images. Obviously, there's the size of an image, because a big image, the ones that you take on your camera phone nowadays can be, if you've got the quality settings right, they can be huge, massive, 5-6 meg, which if in website land is a really
multiple
big
pages.
Yeah, it is exactly. It's multiple pages all downloading in one tiny little bit. So that's one of the size of the image can be key. The other bit is the actual format of the image as well. So there's a lot of conversation. Well, there's been a format around for a long time which is called WebP. There are different image formats. So we know image formats as JPEG, and we know image formats as like PNG and things like that, which I'm sure they're names that you've come across over the course of your time. But there's something called WebP. This is a web optimized image. The problem with WebP, which still blows my mind to this day because WebP's been around so long, is not all browsers support it. And I'm looking at you, Apple Safari. Not all browsers support it. So you have to have a fallback. So the reason why we do WebP, I always have this conversation with clients, and we have this conversation. We go, right, we're going to put WebP on it, but just be aware that not all browsers are going to support it. And they turn around and said, well, doesn't that mean that my web speed's not going to change then? I went, yes, but as long as Google sees that your web speed has improved, because Google do see WebP images, then we do not care. from an SEO point of view, from a web experience point of view, in terms of this algorithm update which Google are pushing, then that's really all that we care about. But yeah, there can be issues with that. So sometimes we have to fall back onto JPEG images. So what we typically do there is we allow users to update, add images, update images in JPEG format, the formats that they're used to. And we get the CMS to do all the heavy lifting, or the server to do the heavy lifting, in terms of taking that image, converting it, moving it into different sizes, and then presenting it as a WebP instead. Or if the browser doesn't support, it will do JPEG.
Very good. And you're still finding that even on, let's say, those FTSE 100 clients and stuff like that, that even something as basic as image optimization is still a huge issue?
Huge, yeah, absolutely. Because it gets worse at an enterprise level, because typically you have more fingers all over the dials. Yeah, you've got more fingerprints all over the place. There's loads of different people in the CMS adding stuff, changing stuff. Adding. The person that adds case studies is not the same person that adds, the typical content on a service on a service page, for example. So you have more fingerprints all over the place. So that's where it's really important for us as an agency to make sure that when we were doing that process, we were making sure, okay, how do we make sure that things like that don't happen again? Because there's going to be so many people. How can we, quote unquote, dummy proof the website, make it the best user experience from a back end, not just a front end, to ensure that we're keeping the website future proof for years to come? And in that case, that's where we start implementing, like I just mentioned, server side image optimization or conversion to pull those things out. But there are other things as well that we just, people forget that websites are quite living, breathing things. A static website doesn't really exist anymore, and they change quite a lot, and people ask for new things. So it's important that you can't just do this process once a year. Well, you can probably do it once a year, but you can't just do it once on your website and then expect it to work. You really have to do this process quite a few times, because any changes, new features that you've added to that website may in fact incur some kind of issues in terms of web optimizations. New JavaScript, for example, can be introduced onto a page, and that can cause issues because JavaScript can only be loaded in a certain way. Typically, and again, I hope none of my developers are listening, but developers are quite lazy. Okay, they'll build something really quickly, and then they might not think, oh, how's this going to affect loading? So you have to have those conversations. So typically, to put this into context, what happens when we do these audits is there's me sat on a call, and my lead developer sat on a call, and I will sit there with the lead developer, and I'll go through your typical web audits. And I advise anybody to do this if you're worried about your user experience and your web experience on your website. Then go and use PageSpeed Insights. It is the best tool. I still don't understand people use the GT matrix and stuff like that. Why do that? Use Google's own, because Google's the one that cares, and if they tell you to do something, then do something. So go and use WebSpeed and just start putting pages in. Don't just put your homepage in. Your homepage is a different kettle of fish than every other page. My advice is just identify what your main templates are, okay? So you might have your homepage, your contact page, your service page, your product page if you're e-com, your category page if you're e-com. Take your templates. And even for this enterprise, what we discovered when I did this enterprise one, we had about 10 templates. It's not huge. It's not a huge amount. We run all of those through PageSpeed Insights, and we saw what the results came out. And we started to go through those results bit by bit and identify what those issues are. And then the process after that, once you've identified them, is one, you'll end up identifying global things. Yeah, these are things that might be in your header or your footer or a part of the infrastructure of the website. If you identify a global improvement, then quids are in, because you've basically means if you fix it once, you don't have to fix it on every other template. So what we identified with this enterprise level, and I'm not going to name them because I don't want to embarrass them, is that we found when it was built, actually, I've been only embarrassing my developers anyway. When it was built, all the JavaScript was compiled into one file. So it was basically, this is a big JavaScript file, and it was done in that way to kind of help with performance in its own way. It was trying to make sure that we're not trying to download multiple files all at the same time. It's trying to download one and then it's done and it can be cached and all that kind of thing. But actually, what we're finding is actually we could probably break out this file into not all of its individual elements, but certain segments of elements and go, okay, well, this only needs to load here. This needs to load right at the end. It doesn't need to load right at the start of the loading process and that kind of thing. And doing that process is quite involved because then you're talking about a lot. But because it was so global and it was on every single page, we typically found that fix, which was 1 to 2 hours to reformat all those JavaScript files, decrease page load speed by a couple, even a couple of seconds in some instances, depending on the page. Yeah. So it was really an effective means of doing it. If you can find global things, that's great, but you've equally got to find the small things as well. And in this case, we're only talking about web page speed, and that's not just the only thing we're talking about when it comes to this Google experience.
No. But I think you hit on a really important point there. When people are using tools like GTmetrix, Page Speed Insights, they put in the homepage, nothing else. They put in the homepage. That looks good. Yeah, good to go. Even e-commerce site, you're like, your product pages are so important, and that's where you're going to have all the big images, maybe the videos of the product, embedding iframes from YouTube. There's going to be so much content on those pages, and they're the ones that you really need to look at. Yeah, so definitely, if people have used those tools before, go put your other pages into them.
Exactly. Really important to put those pages in. You can't just assume that your website is your homepage, because it's not. And I think people don't understand that Page Speed Insights just looks at a page by page, okay? Because it just asks for the domain, yeah. So it's kind of confusing. But yeah, putting loads of pages. Another example, we saw this was not our website. I should stress this in this case, because I was looking at it for someone that was coming on board with us, but it was not our website, and we did the same thing where we're looking at a category page, like you said. So this is a page which has got lots of products on there, and it's got lots of pictures on there because there's 30-40 products all on there. The problem with that page, it was loading terribly slowly, and we couldn't really get our heads around it. And they were questioning, why is our conversion rate or our click-through rate like really, really low? The problem is that all of those pictures, the little tiny pictures, they were like 150 pixels by 150 pixels, but they were not loading 150 pixels. They were loading 1,050, 500 pixels by 1,500 pixels. So they were loading 10 times the amount of size that they needed to, and then they were just being shrunk down into this little box. And then there was 30 of them all on a page. So it was grinding everything to a halt. So things like that, that's a really easy thing to sort out. If you know what you're doing and you can do it, it's a really easy thing to sort out, to make sure you're just compressing those images down on the server side, having all of those images depending on what resolution you've got, and then pulling those through. Quick, easy job, and massive savings in terms of page speed.
Brilliant. So I suppose we mentioned there, it's not just about page speed with core web vitals. We're back to DuckDuckGolf now.
Which, by the way, is available, just in case. It won't be for very long. So by the time this goes out, it won't be available.
So if we're looking at obviously the overall page speed is important, but one of the things is how quickly, as in first input, basically, how quickly the site comes up for the user, that initial. Other things can be loading in the back end, as you say, you can have JavaScript to load later on, but it's that first input. So how long it takes that person to actually interact with the site. And they've broken all that down into, I can't remember the three of them offhand. First input, cumulative layout shift, and there's one other one that is
largest contentful paint. So they've broken these out. So Google has always given us, Google have never said implicitly, this is the rules that you have to follow. We've had a rule of thumb that's been, your site needs to load within 3 seconds, which is fluffy and nothing. And we've kind of had rumors to say, page speed only really affects the bottom 10%, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really mean anything. So for Google to come out 12 months in advance, now 18 months in advance, and say, hey, these are your 3 rules, and we're even going to give you some specific numbers to go along with them, I would sort of sit up and listen. Because if history is to tell us anything, Google never tell anybody jack, and never tell anybody. They won't tell anybody jack 18 months in advance. Okay, that's unheard of. Okay, even major algorithm, we don't really get major algorithm updates anymore. We had we have these core algorithm updates every so often, and they're tiny and they're insignificant, and clearly this is Google's way of sort of drip feeding things through. We've not had a major core algorithm update for years. Panda, penguin, all the P's, they've all been and gone. We don't get them anymore. So for Google to turn around and say, these are your 3 rules, and we're going to give you specific numbers in which to meet, I specifically would really stand up and listen to that, because I think it's really cool. And look, Google, if you read their documentation of Google, they'll say, oh, it won't affect everybody. It'll only affect a small. It will. Okay. I can assure you it really will, because I am shocked. I'm still shocked to this day, the amount of websites that I look out and realize just quite how slow these websites are. And now that we've got PageSpeed Insights and we can see the information about CLS and FID and all of those metrics at largest contentful paint, you can see how far off the mark a lot of them are. So I implore you to go and check out your website. And again, like I said, don't just look at the homepage, look at a series of pages, because for us to have these very specific rules in the SEO world is completely unheard of. We don't get rules in the SEO world. That's why we're all cowboys. No, we're not. It's we don't get them. So to have them is really, really important. And really, if we're going to do anything, we should follow those rules.
Brilliant. So, man, if you were to break down, for small kind of people listening to this, kind of generally kind of, small business owners, people in marketing departments, they've probably never looked at this side of things before. If you were to kind of say, okay, guys, here's a couple of steps right now. Here's what you should go off. Here's what you should go and do that can hopefully maybe get you some quick wins on this side of things, what would you say to them?
That's a good question. Number one, you need to understand what you're dealing with. It's the audit process. So, like I said, go away and put your website, a couple of your website main template pages. And it's like you said before, Mark. The main landing page of a website is not the homepage, okay? Unless it's branded. And if you are thinking, oh, I really need to rank for my branded term, then you're mad, okay? Because in most cases, you don't have to. The major landing page for your website is not the homepage. So just putting in the homepage and going, oh, we're fine, is the worst thing that you can do. Like you said, major landing pages are things like category pages in e-commerce, like you said, product pages in e-commerce, things like that. So service pages in e-commerce are going to be the ones that create, service pages on normal sites, for example, lead gen sites, they're going to be the ones that acquire the most valuable traffic for you. So you need to be putting in these pages, and you don't need to do it template wise. So if you've got 5 services, say, don't put in every service page. They're all going to be much of a muchness. Things like how many words are on a page or how many pictures it has, things like that. It won't really have an effect. If you've got an issue with images and pictures, it will tell you. So don't think about putting every single one in. But put your major templates into PageSpeed Insights. Do that and see what comes out. It's generally in plain English, okay? There's some technical terminology in there. If you don't understand it, source someone who knows what they're talking about. Or reach out and ask us. And I'm more than happy to decode any PageSpeed Insights on LinkedIn or anything like that. I'm more than happy to do that. But go and find out what you're dealing with. And then in certain cases, there are a lot of things that you can do. The first one, if you're seeing, certain server things pop up in your reports, go and talk to your web hosting provider and see what they say, see what recommendations they make. You are paying for the service, so unless you are paying for a subpar service, then you shouldn't expect a subpar service. So go and ask them, because they will just keep you on whatever metal that they have put you on. They will try and avoid moving you around if they're at all possible. So go and ask them.
I suppose just one thing from that side of things as well is, depending on the content management system you're on, you can get hosting that's specifically built and optimized for your particular content for your content management system as well, which will make a massive difference.
Absolutely, because you want everything to work in unison as much as possible. We do a lot of work on Umbraco, and for Umbraco, we have to use the Azure network by Microsoft. The Azure network by Microsoft works with Umbraco in such a nice way, and produces those results for us. It's the same with the majority of the web is on WordPress, and you can get hosting which is specifically orientated towards being on WordPress and optimized in such a way. So yes, you should be looking into that. Um, the other big one is typically images, like we've discussed. Take a look at the size of those images. If you're working on WordPress, there are plugins that allow you to that will allow you to sort of help with that regard. Another thing on WordPress, by the way, because I have worked on WordPress, a lot of WordPress sites in this case, even though we don't work on WordPress as an agency. I've just done this as sort of friendly advice. Be wary about your plugins. The largest issue that I see about site speed is plugins, even disabled plugins. You think they're not doing anything, they bloody well are, okay? You should be getting rid of them. And if you're not using a plugin, it's not active in terms of actually using it on your site, don't keep it active and don't keep it on your site. Get rid of them. The amount of times that I've logged into a friend or a blogger that website, and I've just gone in and removed some plugins, and it's had a massive effect.
Yeah.
All you're doing there is it's like ivy on a wall. It's just seeping its roots into the very core brick of your website and slowly rotting it away and slowing it down. Its integrity is completely kaput. That's what plugins in the large case plugins are doing. And be careful about unknown plugins and stuff like that. They not only are they going to have site speed implementations because, like I said, developers are a bit lazy. Also, they can be a massive security risk as well. So just be aware
Huge.
of that.
And a complete, which is from our point of view in this discussion, a massive resource hog. And especially if you're on a fairly bog standard web hosting package, your resources are very limited. So you put one plugin in there, and that can have an absolutely detrimental effect on your speed and your performance.
Yeah, exactly. So plugins are not a no. You have to use plugins on WordPress. That's how the platform. I'm not saying don't use plugins. I'm just saying be very careful and prune every once in a while. Okay, just take a look through your installed plugins and take a look and see if you need everything. Images we've discussed. Try and get those images converted. Um, Try and get them compressed. I'm going to say something which may be controversial here. The big player in the WordPress world for image compression is WP Smush, and it's the world's worst plugin I've ever come across in the world. It doesn't do anything. It only wants to do it when it wants to do something. There are other alternatives. I can't think off the top of my head what those alternatives are, unfortunately, but there are other alternatives. Go and look for them, and take a look at some reviews and what people are talking about in terms of image compression. The other side is a bit more technical, okay? There are things where you can obviously minification of HTML, CSS, text compression. These are all things that are actually relatively easy to do. They're server side. You can do them with plugins on WordPress, and things like that. There are some really good plugins on WordPress, by the way, that will allow some site speed optimizations. All I'll say is you do need someone if you're not technically au fait, okay, you do need someone to sort of help your hand with it because sometimes ticking some boxes and turning things on will just break things rather than, and which will make it faster because it'll load nothing really quickly, but it will just break things. So just be careful of that. And they're the key things. Everything after that is a little bit more technical. I would implore you to get your developer involved and see what you can do. The last key thing, by the way, is CLS. Now, CLS is a big thing. We've not discussed the topic yet, and I really wanted to say it before we finished up. CLS is cumulative layout shift, and it's actually not really a performance metric whatsoever. It's something a little bit different, and it's one of the reasons why I really like the way Google's done this to make a better web. We've all been in this position where we've loaded up a web page, and we've tried to hit a button, most likely the add to cart button. And suddenly, because this web page, we're so impatient as human beings, we are, because this web page is still loading, it suddenly moves. Or we've tried to read an article and we're scrolling through, we've read paragraph 1 and 2, and this article's still loading, and then suddenly I get shifted to some other part of the web page. That's not user error. That is this layout shift. And there are things that you can do to make sure that you can reduce this layout shift. And Google wants to reduce this frustration that users are having. So Google are listening to users here. They're understanding what people are wanting from their web experiences. And I think CLS is going to be the big player here. We've all known about page speed for a long time. We've said sub 3 seconds. And if you look at first contentful paint sort of metrics and numbers, 3 seconds is relatively where it's at. And so, that's good. You should check it, make sure it's all right. First input delay is an interactive, like Mark said, it's about how long it loads before you can then be interactive on that page. And again, for a large proportion of the web, it doesn't make much of a difference. If you've got interactive elements on your page, it might do. So be aware of it and be on the lookout for it. Where I think a large proportion of big players on the web are going to fall foul is going to be CLS. CLS is layout shift, and if I know, there's major press and major media outlets and things like that have a major problem with this, and they really need to look into it. And if you've got an e-com in particular, which
Yeah.
has got a lot of products, a lot of categories, and could potentially, image categories, like we were just talking about, categories coming in at different times, that can cause CLS, that can cause layout shift. So be aware of that. And I think that's going to cause the biggest issues. One tool I've not mentioned, which is really crucial, Search Console.
Yeah. Literally tell you what's wrong.
Exactly, it will tell you, and it's been a recent update. It's been a recent update to Search Console. Search Console, again, a tool which has not really changed a whole massive amount for many years. Suddenly, has really changed over the past couple of years. Now, Search Console will tell you exactly what the issues is. Annoyingly, it will only give you example URLs, by the way, which I think is a bit weird. So if you have an issue, it might only give you a certain amount of URLs which have that issue. But again, think about your website in terms of templates, and you should be able to cover everything off. But yeah, have a look at that. There is now a performance section on Search Console. It is crawling your site. It'll know all your URLs. It will tell you specifically, hey, we have an issue here. It will not tell you individual elements. So if you have a CLS issue, it won't tell you your CLS issue is X or Y. Again, this is why I have my meetings with developers, because we actually use again, free tools. We use Chrome, the Chrome console, the Chrome Dev Tools to identify CLS on websites. Their performance tab in Chrome Dev Tools allows you to see that. So we identify it that way. But if it's telling you a URL, then go and check it out and go and take a closer look. If you've got massive CLS issues on your large site and you don't do something about it in the short term, I think you're going to come up with some major organic issues.
Cool. Brilliant, man. I think that's some great advice there. And CLS, funnily enough, isn't something I've been paying a huge amount of attention to be honest. So it's definitely something we're going to dig into a bit more. We've always been working massively on site speed, which obviously from a conversion rate perspective is massive. But CLS, as you say, particularly on mobile, I think that is definitely going to be an important thing. All right.
Yeah, mostly on mobile sites. Definitely, it's an issue. And like I say, we probably ignore it now because we're so used to it. But the now that I've been involved in these processes so much, it's like when someone tells you how something is made, and then you can never see it in the same light again. Now that I'm doing that, I'm seeing it more and more on some major sites. Uh, the there are some sites that do this really well. I'll give credit to the BBC. The BBC website is really good in terms of web page experience, and things like that. But there are some major players out there that do not do good web experience. And I am surprised, and I'm still surprised when I see it so close to this looming deadline, which, by the way, now that they've pushed it back, it started already. So June was when the rollout started. But in classic Google fashion, it's no day anymore because I think they were worried about people sort of screaming the apocalypse when these things happen. So It's starting rolling out. We'll probably see the finish of the rollout, they say, at the end of August. So not a lot of time to get these things sorted, but do try and get those major issues. Check for CLS if you think, and check your Search Console. If there's any errors in there, go and get them looked at. And yeah, I implore you, go and check it out. And if you need advice, just reach out. If you just send me a screenshot of your or your link to Page Speed Insights, and we'll chat about it.
Brilliant, man. That's fantastic, Tom. If anybody listening would like to check out more about yourself or your business, where should they head to?
Yeah, if you want to check out Inner4, you can do inner4.com is so INA4. Don't ask me where the name come from. It came from somewhere, but INA4 number4.com is the agency. But if you want to just talk and chat to me, then feel free. Just search for me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's mostly where I park. Yeah, go and search for Tom Marriott on there, or search for Digital Marketing Punk. Some people do that as well.
Actually, we never even called you the DM Punk.
No, we've not discussed it. I realised that. I thought I've not even discussed it because I never got onto my night job, that's my night job. We went straight on. It's because I can't show up sometimes. Yeah, at night I'm Digital Marketing Punk. I'm this guy that goes around shouting at people, saying you should be doing this and that and the other. About
Have you gotten a cape?
I've not got a cape yet. Occasionally, I just wrap, a bed sheet around me at night and go out into the night and start yelling at people. No, I've not got a cape yet. It's on the to do. The problem is the pandemic. I mean, this ruined everything. To be quite honest, I can't go out and yell at people in person yet because I'd have to wear a mask. And if you try and yell at someone in a mask, it nullifies the whole experience.
It loses the ambiance of the whole thing. Yeah,
does, exactly. Yeah, Batman got away with it because, well, Batman only had the mask. Actually, he was completely COVID. COVID for Batman now would have had to have the full mask, wouldn't he? Or he would have had to switch it around so he was masked up there. And you could.
I would have liked to see him in his full getup, but then just like the blue disposable mask over that.
Yeah, exactly. But one with those lips on it, the big red lips. That would have been good. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic, Tom. Listen, absolute gentleman. Thank you so much. Lots and lots of brilliant advice for people there. So go check out Tom on LinkedIn, and we'll put the links below in the show notes as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of the Digital Marketing Scoop. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't subscribed yet, please jump into your Apple Podcasts, your Google Podcasts, Spotify, whatever your favorite podcast platform is, and just make sure to follow and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to leave a review if you enjoyed the episode, I'd absolutely love for you to do that. We put out an episode every single week, all with digital marketing tips, case studies, ways to build your business with digital marketing. Also, if you are interested in bringing your own business online or looking at scaling your business, we'd love to chat with you here at CLIQ. You can visit us online at CLIQ.ie.